Gold is an illusion. Bread is the substance. From salt to subsistence, when currency was a matter of life and death. Salt, if we gaze upon today's world, where currency is but a digital figure swirling through the ether, we may forget that the true meaning of economics has been rooted deep within the rice plate and the hungry belly for millennia. In ancient times, money and food were not disparate entities. Rather, the most valuable assets were those most vital to human survival. World history has inscribed this relationship across nearly every civilization, with salt serving as a pivotal protagonist that forever altered the face of labor compensation. As the Roman Empire expanded its dominion, its brave soldiers did not merely crave gold coins, which, at times, could purchase nothing in the depths of a forest, but sought the essential commodity of salt. In that era, salt was regarded as white gold, the sole means of preserving meat for long-term consumption during military campaigns. The etymology of the word salary, which we use so casually today, originates from Salarium, the allowance provided by the state to soldiers for the purchase of salt. This tethering of wages to a condiment reflects an ancient truth. True wealth was not the accumulation of precious metals, but the guarantee of a continuous food supply. The immense value of salt in antiquity was born not of flavor alone, but of extreme scarcity and an arduous production process. In an age before deep earth mining or large-scale desalination, salt was a finite resource restricted to specific regions. This was especially true in the sweltering heat of West Africa, where salt commanded a price so high it was traded for gold of nearly equal weight. Soldiers and merchants traversing the Sahara Desert could not survive without salt to maintain bodily hydration and preserve rations. Great empires like Ghana and Mali flourished by controlling these salt routes. Berber merchants would transport gargantuan slabs of salt on camelback, trekking through death-defying conditions for weeks to trade them for gold from southern mines. These salt slabs functioned simultaneously as a medium of exchange and a life-preserving tool for an entire continent. Mesopotamia and Egypt adding another layer of historical nuance, the relationship between food, money, and power becomes even more profound. In Mesopotamia, the world's earliest civilization, the economy did not begin with silver or gold coins, but within the state granaries. Cities such as Uruk and Lagash in the Tigris-Euphrates Valley operated on a system of distributing barley as wages for labor. Workers who dug canals or erected temples were compensated with grain rations based on their days of service. Evidence from cuneiform clay tablets dating back over 4,000 years meticulously records exactly how many bags of grain or jars of oil each person was owed, functioning much like a modern-day payroll. The state's control over granaries was not a matter of morality, but the very heart of political power. He who controls the food controls the city. Regarding the Great Pyramids of Egypt, which many still mistakenly perceive as the product of slave labor, historical and archaeological evidence points in a vastly different direction. This misconception stems from the imagery of ancient commoners as scattered and weak. However, in the context of Old Kingdom Egypt, commoners referred to a farming population managed by a highly sophisticated, centralized state under the pharaoh. With a population of roughly 1 to 2 million, the state could conscript a mere 2-3%, approximately 20,000 to 40,000 workers, which sufficed for pyramid construction. This was achieved by leveraging the rhythms of nature. Every year, when the Nile flooded the fields for months, farmers were left without work. The state utilized this period of national labor surplus to bring people into construction projects in exchange for food rations from the royal stores. This management of surplus labor was not a slave drive, but a strategic social stability policy. Leaving a massive population idle posed a risk of rebellion. Conscripting them into service with food welfare ensured social harmony. Furthermore, these projects spanned 20 to 30 years, utilizing a rotational labor system where villages sent men according to quotas. There were permanent skilled artisans who functioned as state officials and temporary laborers who returned home for the harvest. This system was driven by a robust labor team structure, with team names reflecting pride and identity, such as the Friends of Khufu or the Drunks of Menkor. The state provided massive infrastructure to support them, including worker cities, gargantuan communal kitchens that processed dozens of cattle daily, and even medical care. The pyramids were thus not monuments to mindless oppression, but the result of a state that could precisely master food, labor, and time. The pharaoh was not merely a king, but the guarantor of the Nile's satiety, using carbohydrates and proteins as the fuel to build the wonders of the world. The Mediterranean world, as we transitioned into the classical era, the Mediterranean world began developing monetary economies, yet the state could never truly sever its ties to food. Imperial Rome, at its height, had to import staggering amounts of wheat from Egypt and North Africa to feed a population exceeding 1 million. The annona, or grain dole, was not an act of charity but a policy of national security. If grain failed to reach Rome, riots were inevitable. History records that numerous emperors lost their thrones or were abruptly ousted from power solely due to their failure to secure the food supply for the populace. The phrase bread and circuses, panem et circenses, did not refer to entertainment alone. It was a stark reminder that political power in the ancient world was inextricably bound to the loaf of bread. Animal fats and pelts. Even in medieval Europe, where coinage became more prevalent, the feudal system remained anchored to the land and its yield. Peasants were not paid in cash, but received the right to farm and harvest for their own subsistence. Wheat, oats, and bread were the true measures of status. The Great Famine of the 14th century, spurred by climate shifts and disease, shook this social structure to its core. While labor wages rose due to a shortage of workers, money could not easily buy food that didn't exist. This serves as a lesson that the labor and food markets are linked far more deeply than wage figures suggest. Simultaneously, in the frozen reaches of the Arctic, the Inuit defined wealth through animal fats and pelts. Seal skins, in particular, were not only a defense against death in sub-zero temperatures, but also a universally accepted medium of exchange. Trading high-quality pelts was akin to a large-scale modern wire transfer, as it was the sole guarantee that the owner would survive the long winter. The Great Irish Potato Famine. As the world entered the Industrial Age, currency began to dominate history's lead role, yet the shadow of food never vanished from the security equation. The Great Irish Potato Famine of the mid-19th century remains one of the world's most painful cautionary tales, demonstrating how reliance on a single staple crop under a distorted social structure can annihilate a nation's stability in just a few years. During that time, most of the Irish population was trapped in a cycle of poverty and a cruel land leasing system. They were forced to rely on small plots of land to grow the lumper potato, the only crop high-yielding enough to provide the calories needed to sustain a family in a confined space. When the Phytophthora infestans blight caused the potatoes to rot across the island starting in 1845, catastrophe was immediate. Yet, the tragedy's most harrowing aspect was not the fungus, but human failure. Under economic laws and debt obligations, Ireland was forced to continue exporting massive quantities of grain and livestock to England while its own people starved. The image of ports filled with meat and wheat being shipped out under military guard, while Irish farmers scoured for grass or ate carrion to survive, is a haunting reflection of an inhumane free trade mechanism and an economy completely detached from the bellies of its people. The aftermath of this tragedy permanently altered the face of the nation and the world. In less than a decade, Ireland's population was reduced by nearly half. Over 1 million died of starvation and disease, and another 2 million fled their homeland on coffin ships to face an uncertain future in North America. Many of these ships became floating graveyards as the weakened passengers succumbed to typhus and cholera. This swift demographic collapse shattered Irish social structures permanently. The island's population has never returned to its pre-famine peak, even nearly 2 centuries later. Meanwhile, the Irish diaspora in America became a vital force in nation-building and global politics, a legacy rooted in hunger and tears. It reinforces the brutal truth that when the food system collapses, gold in the bank or titles to land cannot shield a citizenry from the collapse of civilization. True security lies not in ledger entries, but in a food supply chain that remains connected to the stomachs of the people. The Eastern Hemisphere in China, various dynasties developed highly complex state granary systems as early as the Han period. They established ever-normal granaries to buy rice when the market was flooded and sell it back during shortages. This concept was a prototype of countercyclical fiscal policy long before economic terminology existed. The philosopher Guanzhong once said, "When the granaries are full, the people will know manners and virtue," reflecting the view that morality and social stability cannot flourish if stomachs are empty. Similarly, in Edo period Japan, the economy revolved around the koku, a unit of rice sufficient to feed one person for a year. A daimyo's status was measured by the rice productivity of his lands, underscoring that the economy of that era was a tangible economy of satiety. This correlation between hunger and purchasing power remains evident even in modern history. During World War II, as financial systems crumbled and goods became scarce, the true cost of living was reflected in the black market. People traded luxury watches or family diamonds for a single sack of potatoes or a few eggs just to survive. These events are recurring lessons that in moments of extreme economic crisis, bank balances lose their meaning, and systems regress to the exchange of food and basic necessities, the most honest medium of exchange in human consciousness. Even today, as currency transforms into digital code or borderless cryptocurrency, as long as humans require 3 meals a day, any economic system that cannot translate figures into actual calories is a fragile illusion, destined to shatter when the gears of food production stall. Power over the plate beyond the economic dimension. A deeper look reveals that in every civilization, food management has never been neutral. It is the quietest form of power structure and politics. Food rationing throughout history is the most explicit ranking of human value. Those who eat first are those with the highest status, while hunger is often weaponized to silence dissent. The decision of who gets to eat, when, and how much defines class without needing a single written law. This lesson of power over the plate returns to haunt the modern world. Despite our digital currencies, the supply chain crises of the COVID-19 era reminded us that a full bank account is worthless if the grocery shelves are empty. Looking toward a future of rising temperatures, soil degradation, and water scarcity, history forewarns us that food will once again become a strategic currency. The wealthiest and most stable nations may not be those with the largest financial reserves, but those capable of consistently feeding their populations amidst climatic volatility. Food will become a diplomatic weapon and a security guarantee more vital than any technology. No matter how intelligent our AI becomes or how perfect our financial algorithms are, the fundamental human question remains unchanged from 4,000 years ago. Does this system keep the majority fed? If the answer is no, that technology or empire is no different from the fallen civilizations of the past, except that this time, it may collapse even faster under the weight of its own complexity. These historical fragments merge into a singular core. The lifeblood of civilization has always been food and energy, and that remains the most ancient and undeniable truth of human economics forevermore.